Welcome to Not Your Ordinary Parts, a podcast where we talk about hard things associated with the human experience with the goal of increasing awareness, growth, and healing. You may hear information from professionally licensed therapists, life coaches, healers, doctors, etc. This information is not medical advice or therapy and is not meant to replace actual therapy or instructions given by a doctor or a personal therapist. I'm your host, Jalon Johnson. My guest today is Luis Diaz. Luis is a bilingual therapist who specializes in treating anxiety disorders and mood disorders. Luis also works in the areas of trauma, gender identity, sexual orientation, stress, relationships, self-esteem, mindfulness, self-care, and culture shock. Luis's goal is to help people understand the connection between their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors so that they can find relief in their lives and achieve their goals. So, Luis, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. Um, I really do appreciate it. I am so excited to go ahead and start this podcast. That was a really beautiful introduction. I do appreciate it, and I'm excited. Like I said, let's go right there to it. What do you have for me? Come on, let's start.
So I gave a brief description of who you are and what you do, but so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better, can you tell us about yourself and your background and how you got to who and where you are today?
Yeah, perfect. So I will try to be as concise as possible. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. So I've been living here. Now I live in Chicago. I've been living here for around since 2009-ish, like I think around August. Yeah, around August 2009. So one of the things when I thinking about this question now is how I had like my whole life back home and experiences that I relate to people are all that I can relate to people like going to school, for example, developing relationships, having your first heart broken. All of those things are from a whole different country and a whole different language. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's just that's completely different of how would I share those experiences with people that were born here in the United States of America. Um, so regardless for that, I was going through my experiences back home. I remember my family is great. My family has always been supportive, and then I also have some dear friends that are still back home, and I'm happy that I have that close knit circle of loved ones still to this day, where I can. I mean, I text my family at least once a day, and that's an understatement because we have like different chats of the family, so there's always there. And then with my friends, and from time to time, I always keep in connection with them to see how they're doing. Some of them are engaged or married, and so how their relationship is going on. So it's just nice having even though I live now in Chicago and I've been living now again since 2009, so like well over 10 years now. It's nice to have and to think about and reflect how you're able to have you can create a life wherever you can go and a meaningful life at that, because I would say that I do have people here that I consider family. But anyways, going back to where I'm at now and where I came from. So talking about experiences, one marked experiences that I always keep with me is that my family always celebrated me, and that continues to this day. And I will say that's really kind of like a hardcore pillar of who I am today, because I do believe in that family aspect and giving support to people that sometimes may not have it. And it might sound strange, but for example, during your birthdays back home with the family, birthdays were huge, and on your day of your birthday, at least you will always get a cake, and you will always have your family singing happy birthday to you. Whether it was a Sunday or it was like a middle of the week thing where your friends maybe couldn't go because it was school, or adults were working and you couldn't plan a big celebration. That was always there. There was always a core, there was always a home base. And that is part of why I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's what part of why I believe in what I do, and I want to target, and I don't say target, focus on my community, because I want to provide them with a home base like that. Because there's not a lot of therapists that look like me out there, right? So, or they speak Spanish. So I want to give that to this particular group of people that I understand what having a home base can be. And that's just very exciting for me as a person, like as like a passion project. But it's also nice to hear from people like they don't even have to say thank you. It's the relief in their voice when they see how I look like or when I can speak the same language as them, and then they're able to tell me how they feel and what they're thinking, what they're going through in their own native language, and they don't have they don't have to think about getting lost in translation, if that makes sense. So going that's why I explained to that, because it all comes down to like how I ended up being in psychology. Because in high school, at one point, when it was time to apply for colleges, I didn't know what I wanted to study. At one point, I wanted to be a veterinarian, but then I took some science classes as I went through high school, and I'm like, this is not for me. Except biology. Biology was fun, but other than that, we're not doing that. But I have people that will come to me for advice. Again, I don't know how much great advice a 14, 15-year-old could give at that time, but stranger things have happened, right? And I didn't know what to study, so I just applied. And funny story. So back home, there's I don't know now because it's been years, clearly. And for those of you who are asking, I'm 35, so it's been years. So back home, you take a test and then you get a score. And then with that score, they also take a average of your GPA or your grade point average from I don't know what grade to 12th grade. And then they do some mathematical equation and you get a score. That score lets you know what colleges you can apply to, because different colleges have this is the minimum of that score that you can have to apply. I think what happened was that I was so confident in myself that I was gonna get whatever I was gonna get anywhere I wanted. So I just put the for my first choice. I remember I put it there, and then the other ones because you need to rank them in order that you would like to go in case the first choice didn't go through, right? Because if not, if the second choice, if you didn't go to the first one, the second choice, if they accepted you, that all your paperwork will go there. Like you will be a student there. Like that's it. So what happened was I just put random universities from the other slots because I'm like I'm gonna get in. I didn't. So and then the one I got the one I got accepted to was 2 hours away from my house. Me having no car, so that was gonna be a problem, right? Right. So after long story short, after much paperwork and calls, I ended up transferring to a college campus that was a branch from the main university that I wanted to apply to. And they had a psychology program, but it was a forensic psychology program. I didn't know what forensic psychology was. I just heard psychology and I'm like, why not? And now I attribute it to the universe and like things that you manifest and sometimes opportunities that you don't know that they're there. And they present to you, but you really don't understand how they're going to fit into your life at that moment. And when I started forensic psychology, I loved it. Like it was so interesting. And forensic psychology, y'all can Google it later, but in its essence, it's just think about applying psychology terms to criminal behavior, to like the law aspect of things. And it was very interesting. Serial killers, yeah, like gang affiliation behavior, like all these things. Uh, so I found it really interesting to the point that I was like, well, I want to get a master's, but there wasn't a master's program in forensic psychology in Puerto Rico. And I found that there were some I ended up funneling down to two. It was Chicago or Sarasota, Florida. Because I never heard of Sarasota, Florida at that time, I just went ahead and went to Chicago because I'm thinking, oh, a person from the island, the Caribbean, going to a big city. So, in my mind, I'm making this whole movie. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be great, which I am great, right? Stellar. But at that moment in time, what I had here really didn't match what I was going to encounter in the United States of America as a queer person, as as a person of color, and as somebody who speaks a different language, and people can tell that I'm not from the area, or what people like to call it an accent. I didn't know these factors were going to affect my life so much because I'm coming from a country when, at least to me at that point, yes, it's always going to be, you know, systemic racism and all that stuff back home, but it's by nowhere near what is in the United States of America. And I mentioned those three things specifically because those three things really did affect my life. And when I started my master's in forensic psychology here in Chicago, sorry, here in Chicago, it was eye-opening to the point that I thought I knew English because I've been taking English since preschool because I was fortunate enough to go to a private school back home. And what all the classes were English except, you know, Spanish or history of Puerto Rico, or if you had dance or art, those were in Spanish, but everything else, science, your core classes, like they call them, they were in English. I remember they told me I needed to learn how to write. And they told me you cannot start school until you complete this writing course. I took that as an offense, and I was like, okay, fair. Because also, how you write in English is not the same how you write in Spanish. Like one really simple example that I like to tell people: English tends to be in concise, and people want like to get to the point. In Spanish, there's a lot of, I like to call it adjectives, but it's a lot of like florid language. It's a lot of description, and that's how I wrote. But anyways, so that didn't work. I took that writing course, and now I can say that I can, like, my documentation is my strongest point. Like, even I get kudos at my work right now. When people look at my notes, they're like, "Oh wow!" And I'm just like, "Yeah." People, I sometimes help people edit their resumes or edit their cover letters because documentation became my strongest heart. So because I took it as a challenge, I was like, "Okay, let's do that." And then even the way that I socialized changed as well. Because as a person from the Caribbean, again, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. It's real what we will describe as a warm culture. So if I met you, for example, Jolan, I met you on the street in Puerto Rico, it will be normal to give you a handshake and or maybe a hug, like literally just like a hug. And if you were with your spouse or anyone that will be female presenting at that point in time, it will be normal to like go ahead and give them a kiss on the cheek. Like that's kind of how it goes there. Uh, Here, not so much, right? So let's just say that a rumor started happening also at the college campus because that I wasn't respecting people's boundaries, and that was the shock to me because I was like, "What do you mean I'm not respecting people's boundaries?" I'm like, "I'm the most respectful person I know." So that was an eye opener. And the reason that I say all of this is because when you mentioned earlier when you were introducing us about culture shock is about these little things that really people don't tend to think about because we're just being ourselves, but it can bring a lot of stress and frustration within relationships and the environment that you develop yourself in. So that is one of the things that happened with me in Chicago, but I'm happy that I was able to meet friends there to this point that I feel like they're my family. And I finished my master's degree and then understood that the forensic field was not for me because when I saw that the job market was either jail, being in court all the time, being as an expert witness, doing evaluation for like high profile like criminal like cases, having to deal with lawyers all the time, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is the environment for me. So that was scary because then and I never knew what a student loan was. So I took a bunch of student loans. So I'm right in that statistic of like being in debt with student loans, right? And then you learn about all these other countries. Because when we met for the first time, you and me, we talked about travel. And then and one of the things that I learned is that, oh, people study for free. Like your loan debt is what? $1,000. Like it's mind blowing. So you get to see all these things, and that's what I want to bring to the therapy space for a lot of my clients because all these nuances of culture and because culture is basically ways of life. If we kind of like the essence of what it is, and people don't sometimes don't stop and think about how this is really going to affect your life. So one of them was that, and then I moved completely. Thankfully, psychology is transferable, so I decided to pursue clinical psychology, which that means it can mean private practice, which is where I am right now. But before I got there, it was because of those three factors that I mentioned earlier that uh, the language, the way I look, and uh, presentingly like a queer person, it it felt like there was a hindrance because I have a full-on master's. I have two languages, and I remember people telling me, just get your license. You are bilingual. Your doors are gonna open. That's what they were telling me in grad school, and I'm here like again, all pumped. Yes, again, stellar. That's not how it went. and it was pretty hard to graduate, and you have this piece of paper that you think is gonna open a lot of doors for you, and it may wear hell out for a lot of people. I don't want to speak for anybody, but the way that it was presented to me was totally different than what I encountered in life. Because I ended up working at a hospital, and that lasted a few months because uh like I got punched by a patient. So I was like, no, we're good. Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that same reaction is probably the same one I had when that happened. So it's like
Wow.
that's not that's we're not gonna go there. And then that was like far away. Like I had to take a bus to a train to another bus to get there. And it was like over an hour, almost 2 hours, like back and forth. Sometimes I would get out late and I would be so tired, or the trains will stop. So I would have to like budget taxi drives all the way from where I was to back home because I live in the city of Chicago, and that was harsh. Then I worked at a nursing home, which is great experience. But I had to take a pay cut, and again, I'm here with the home masters, and I'm making this much, And I was living in a studio, and it was so you're getting hit with reality in the face a lot, and you're like, okay. So then I finally was able to find a corporate job. So I joined the dark side, like they say. So I'm in corporate America. Uh, but I was able to learn so much about the health system in this country, the barriers that people can encounter, especially the Latina and Hispanic population. So now, for example, like I help the company to kind of develop a workflow where like people who speak Spanish are funneled to staff that speak Spanish in a more efficient way. So that way we can actually help these people. And then the other thing is, oh, sorry about that. And then the other thing is that when the private, and at that point when joined the insurance company, which I still am with, I did at some point years back private practice, but it was part time. So it was full time and part time. And then I loved it, but it got to a point of that I was burning out because my days would start at 7 a.m. Like I wake up, and sometimes I wouldn't get home, not sleep. I wouldn't get home until like 11:30. I mean, I will be the one that will be like, I'm so tired. I'm putting cereal on a bowl with milk. I'm eating this and I'm going to sleep. Like that's it. We're not doing anything else. And so with that happened, I experienced burnout for the first time, and I remember this as if it was yesterday. Because I was like, it got to a point that I told myself, you need to quit one of these two jobs. Like either you transfer full time or you leave or you leave your part time because you're not doing well. And I remember I woke up, I don't know what, it was super early or super late at night. I know that it wasn't a normal business hour to call somebody. And I called my mom. I'm crying. So imagine montage movie, something really sad happened. You know, when the person's sitting on the toilet crying like their life is in shambles? That was me. So, and also I'm a Libra, so I like to be dramatic. So I'm like crying and I'm calling my mom. I love my mom to death. Uh, so I remember I told her, I was like, I don't think this is for me. I was telling her, I think I'm gonna move back home. Like I was just really going through it. I think that was because I already decided to leave the counseling job at that point, and it hurt because then I was like thinking, I sacrificed so much of my life and so many of my relationships at times with people for this to quit. So it was hard. And she told me, and in this tone, I'm paraphrasing because it was in Spanish, right? And she goes, Luis, you're talking about you did it for 2 days. Like you did it for 4 years. And I was like, okay, but true. And she was like you told me, and then she's like, you told me that you have feel happy because you have some client told you that you saved their lives. Like, that doesn't count to you? And I was like, it's kind of like getting hit with a paper, like a dog, you did something back. It's just like, but truthfully, I'm just like, okay, I mean, yes. And so she gave me like a really tough love pep talk that worked. I mean, at that moment, I'd be like, you could have. I mean, I would have wished that it was different, different type of interaction. But she helped put things into perspective. So I was able, thanks to that, and again, like I was saying, like how my family is a support system then and still now. So thanks to that, I was able to manage it really well and put things into perspective and reframe my thoughts. And I left, then stayed, and then I went back to private practice again, which I am now, but not as full time, as a contractor now, because now I have boundaries and now I understand what I don't need to go. And so now, right now, then the private practice hired me, I made it clear that I wanted to focus on the Latina and or Hispanic population because working in the health system and knowing how difficult it is to find a counselor that speaks your language or that even is from your same culture, because we're not even talking about that aspect. We're just looking for somebody who can speak Spanish. But the same Spanish that I have with my clients that are from Colombia or Mexico, Panama, Argentina, their Spanish is different in the sense of like they use words that we don't use. So sometimes that's still a language barrier in therapy. Even me still talking Spanish. And sometimes I have to stop and say, what do you mean by this? Because I don't know what that means. Or sometimes when I'm talking to somebody and I say something and I remember it's an idiom, I'm like, did you understand what I said with that? They're like, no. I said, but you need to tell me. Because like, I might forget. And so it's all these nuances that happen in the therapy space. But what I can assess from my clients and see is like make asking those questions with somebody who they feel understands them versus is judging them makes a whole world of a difference. And that's how I got here. I know that I ranted quite a bit, so I mean, I just ran off. But like, if there's any questions later, I don't know where you're gonna put it. You can put it in the comments. You can send her a DM. I'll answer them later. Like, but did I answer your question? I think I did. I think I just gave you like a whole life
Of
story
course,
here,
you did.
like a whole case
It
study.
was great. It was great though. I mean, you really showed who you are as a person, right? And what I'm trying to do is to show that therapists are people too. You know what I mean? Because speaking personally, I would always think, if you're a therapist, you have all these tools, like you don't struggle the same way I struggle, or you didn't have, the same experiences that we went through. But it's true. I promise you, so many people think like that. So this is a platform for you to tell your story, and you did that. So thank you. I'm grateful.
You're welcome.
You also spoke about being a person who can represent your community. And when we were speaking earlier, you said that what you wanted to do was to, um, let me quote it exactly. You said that it was very important for you to show the Hispanic community that there are ways to have mental health care without insurance in this country, right? So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that too. So if you will.
Yes, no, thank you so much. Because mental health, there's an accessibility issue, right? And we can have a different episode about this, but basically it boils down to the health system having a business model. That's, I'm gonna leave it at that. So basically it means if you have the money, you're gonna get the care. That's kind of where it is. If you don't have the money and yeah, you can have certain programs that can assist you and whatnot, but you're most likely, if you look into it and research, you're not going to get the same amount, the same treatment of the same quality, right? So there's three things that I like to touch with people, especially the my population, in regards to like Spanish speaking, because they again, navigating a world or navigating a country where you don't know the language is difficult. I mean, it's just it is because you don't understand what's going thrown at you, and people don't understand what you're trying to throw back at them, communication
Sure.
wise. So three things, yeah. So three things that I always try to like make people think about when they don't have insurance, because a lot of people have that mindset: I don't have insurance, I can't get therapy, and that's not true. I cannot budget for therapy, I cannot find quality therapy. That's not true either. So the first things that I tell people about and explain to them is a sliding scale. Not all therapists do it, not all therapy offices do it, but some of them do. Like, for example, I do sliding scales. And sliding scales means that I have my set price, right, out of pocket if you don't have insurance. But if you can't make that, you and me, let's say you and me, you call me, you want therapy services, and I tell you, this is an example. Let's say, yeah, my therapy sessions are $100. and you're like, oh, I can't pay that. And I was like, okay, so let's talk about what you can pay. So we would talk about, okay, how much, we talk about income. Like, so how much approximately do you make, a week or 2 weeks? What is your paycheck? Like, roughly, what do you feel you have? Because I don't try not to pry that much, but also because, but that can also be a tricky conversation. Now I feel comfortable having it, but I had to learn. It's a tricky subject. Like finances is something that people can get can hit them, can strike the wrong chord, right? So now I know how to navigate that. Those questions, like, for example, asking, so roughly, I don't ask them specifically what income they have. Like that's because I don't need that. And I'm always going. I tell the person I'm going by, I'm taking what your word as truth. So what do you feel you have left after you pay all your bills? Like roughly around what? And then when they tell me that number, and every private practice does it differently. Some private practices do ask you for a proof of income, and then they make a math with that number, like your last check and all of that. So it just depends. But the sliding scale is an option. And then let's say that at one point you're like, oh, I can only pay like around 25. Because I also have to think about you. You're gonna see me every week. Yeah, at some point you might be seeing me less, but at the beginning it's every week. So I can't assume that everybody has the same finances and be able to pay whatever my out-of-pocket expenses are. I mean, my out-of-pocket sessions are. So let's say you and me talking, you're like, hey, I can only pay 25. And then if I have space or not, because again, connecting into being a business model, point being, if I don't make money, the organization doesn't exist. Like if I don't make money, I can't have the practice open. If the practice that I'm at right now doesn't make money, they can't stay open. So that becomes then what? An accessibility issue for people who can actually get therapy. So you see how everything is like connected.
Hmm.
So sliding scale is one. So let's say, hey, $25, perfect. And then I'll see you if I see that in my space I can do it, because if I can see that I'm getting, money from other insurances, so I can kind of balance that budget out for all the other expenses, that I'm like, hey, yeah, let's go, $25, and then we'll revisit the conversation like every 3 months, just to see something change for you financially and all that. And normally I also try to do like 90-day kind of like reviews of the person's case, and kind of like, hey, this is where we started, this is where we are, this is your progress, how are you feeling, and kind of go from there. So I also make that just part of the conversation in therapy to normalize that aspect. And also it helps people model how to talk about finances. A little bit of a tangent, because a lot of like issues with between couples is finances. So now I'm able to model how to have these conversations, with loved ones, or with a romantic partner or partners. So that's one. So sliding scale, you can always call and just say, hey, do you have, and if the just ask if any other therapist, if you're calling a group practice, which is a practice that has a lot of therapists, or you're just calling a private practice that is only owned by one person, always ask for a sliding scale, and see where that can get you. The other one, the second one that you can ask for is pro bono work. For example, I do sliding scales and pro bono work. What does pro bono mean? What it means. I give therapy for free. But again, connected to the business model, it's like depending on how much money and finances are funneling in, is how many pro bono spots I can have. Some therapists can have them, some therapists don't. For example, right now, uh, I don't have any available at the moment, but I did have in the past, and I have people that I've seen pro bono. Why? Because again, it is important to me to make this accessible for people who need it. And I don't, and if I can try my best to take away that financial barrier, which is most of the time that's the one of the biggest issues, I will take it away if I can. Like if I have the power and I have the resources to do it, I don't want my client to worry about that. I want them to focus on whatever it is that their goals are, and just leave everything out. Leave that organizing and pro bono work and like figuring it out to me. You focus on yourself. I just don't focus on just you. It's about you. It's not about me. So pro bono work is something that you can also ask when you're calling therapy offices, and or group practices. And the third one that people I noticed that they don't talk about it, they don't know that it exists. Find universities or colleges that have psychology programs. Why? Students there, like I did, they're gonna need practicum hours. They're gonna need to see people to practice therapy. And when people sometimes are hesitant because they're students, and I'm like, yeah, they're gonna be green, right? They're just starting. But it's not like they throw. I tell people, I explain to people, it's not like they're gonna throw you in a room with like a green therapist and then okay, see ya, figure it out. It's not like that. These people are highly supervised. And also, I tell people, also, they're students. Do you think they don't want to pass their practicum and get out and finally get
Mm.
their degree? Of course they do. So, yes, they might be some bumps and bruises, but also we have to demystify that if the older the therapist, like, there's not going to be issues going on. No, like you mentioned before, we're human. I made mistakes in therapy, and I'm going to continue to make mistakes. And I have clients who have told me, I don't like the way you say this, and I just have to sit there and take it. Or I said something that I noticed that it came because again, we're human, we feel emotions, and let's say something my client did that got me like upset, not necessarily because they attacked me, it could just be anything. And I might have just like reacted back with that we call counter transference. And then I have times that again, I'm human. When they come back, I'm like, hey, I just wanted to bring this up before we start. During this last session, I don't know if you noticed, but I was aware that I was feeling, let's say, frustrated because of when you mentioned this. And thinking back, I felt that my tone was not the best. And I feel that my tone was conveying that I was annoyed or angry or that I was against you or, whatever the case might have been. And I have apologized to clients because and also again, talking about modeling, like you have to take accountability for the things that you do because that will make the world a better place. If people took more
Yeah.
accountability to what they did and learn from their experiences, I do think the world will be a better place. But it has to start for everybody, and including the therapist. And I always make it a thing whenever me and my clients are talking, like you mentioned, like again to that human aspect, I tell them, you see me here, all like, I'm the professional, I'm giving you all this like coping skills and talking about how to change behavior. But I have my own issues going on too. Like I'm gonna make mistakes and I get sad and there's some that's happening in my life as well too, right? So oh, I'm sorry, can we curse? I don't know if we curse. I'm sorry. I'm so
You're good.
sorry.
You're good. Go ahead.
So like okay, sorry. I don't know if it's PG-13. That was my bad. So I tell them that too, which is like, hey, we all go through things, and including therapists. So then connecting it back to the students, they're gonna make mistakes, but the same way that any other therapist is gonna make mistakes. So I don't tell people don't let that myth of like, oh, they're a student and not gonna do a good job get in the way. Because the doctor that you see that's 20 years now into the practice had the first patient ever. And because of that first patient, they're able to be here. My first clients, I will never forget them in the different settings that I went in. When I was back in school, back in my bachelor's degree, I did my practicum at the Psychiatric Correctional Hospital of Puerto Rico. So I was like in the psychiatric hospital of the jail system at 18. So I would never forget the first person that I saw there. I would never forget my first when I did my practical for my master's in a community health program. I would never forget my first person that I met there that I gave individual therapy to. And you always remember them. And looking back, I was like, damn, that was not the right intervention at all. Or like, well, how come did you think that was okay? But thankfully I had great supervision, and they challenged me a lot, and challenged me in the sense that it was a good challenge that you need to challenge this thought, because if you're gonna continue to operate like this, you're gonna continue to make the same mistake. And I did. So I tell people, your students, yes, they're gonna make mistakes, but don't let that hinder you from getting good uh, like a good quality mental health, because again, these people are supervised and these students want to graduate. So kind of like if you reframe it that way, oh, I'm going to a place where people do want to do a good job because they do want to graduate. It's better to think about it that way than if you think, oh, they're a student, they're just gonna mess up and I'm gonna be worse off. So again, those three things: sliding scales, pro bono work, and looking for schools that have psychology programs. Those are ways that you can find discounted uh, therapy rates, or you can also get it for free. And that doesn't mean and just because it's free or discounted, again, I'm here. I do both pro bono and sliding scale. And again, I'm not perfect, but I feel like I'm great at what I do, and because I care. So you
Mm.
will find people that care without insurance, basically. Like you're not, just because you have insurance, just because you don't have insurance doesn't mean you're not gonna find good quality of mental health. That's just not true.
That was great, man. And I think being able to offer those resources to people, like I had no idea there was such a thing as pro bono therapy, or even thinking about going to colleges, right? So I mean, you just offered so many different avenues for people to receive quality mental health, um, work, or to speak with a therapist, or sit with somebody, and have their thinking challenged, to get healthy emotionally, or just to be able to have a relationship with a therapist, someone who cares and can help them, that they can relate to. So thank you so much for that, man. That was really good.
Sure, no problem. And also just a little disclaimer, because I like normalizing this. I go to therapy myself. My first therapy session was a sliding scale because I couldn't pay. My insurance didn't cover the person that I wanted to see, and it was a recommendation. And I was like, I can't pay it. And that person, she's still my therapist. I love her to death. Um, I told her that one day I'm gonna wear a shirt with her face on it. She's like, "Don't do it." I'm like, "I'm gonna do it one day." Um, and yeah, it was a sliding scale. And the way that she managed that and the way that she talked about the finances, like that experience was is so marked here in my brain. That was years back, like years. And it still stays with me. And I want to continue giving that to people. So that's again, so thank you again for giving me this opportunity, because again, I am a product, and that person did help me with the issues that I had. I was in a, and just to share and I'll leave it at that, like I went into a really deep bouts of depression, and this person helped me out, and it was a sliding scale. So again, I would like to demystify that as much as I can, because you can get great, phenomenal mental health services without having insurance.
Mhm. That's great. Again, thank you for that, because, like I said, I'm sure there's tons of people who have no clue that that's possible, and you're a product of it. And what I feel what you do is great, and the way that you deliver, you can show that you really care. So if someone could see you for free, like, please, I'd fly to Chicago to see you for free.
Go, go. Thank you. It's like go. This is even free. Oh, and my therapy is only virtual. I only do virtual therapy now. So it's like even that, just like find yourself a virtual therapist. You don't even have to leave home, and so you don't have to waste. You don't have, waste. Sorry, you don't have to spend time on
Right.
transportation or spend money on transportation, and you can still get the quality care. We live in the future. We're living in the future.
Perfect, bro. Thank you for that. Thank you for those tools and avenues to help people find quality care. So another thing that we talked about was travel, right? And we said that we both love to travel. And you said that you had recently taken a trip to Chile, and that it was so insightful, and that you gained so much from it. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your trip.
Okay. Well, again, like I told you, you're giving me my favorite subject to talk about. Uh, so yeah, myself. No, but joking aside, um, I I have traveled. I have, thankfully, after I got a, like I call it, like a big boy job. When I was able to afford things. So I discovered traveling in 2009 thanks to a friend of mine. She lives in Canada now. I love her to death too. And oh, she's actually coming to visit. She's one of the people that I kept in contact, that I like I told, like family. She's coming in the summer, so I'm really excited to see her. Uh, so thanks to her, and it's because she invited me not only to the part of Canada that she lives at, but to meet her friends, her family, be immersed in her life there. And that to me, yes, it's scary because you never know and things can happen. And I was traveling alone, so of course all of that. But I'm talking about how coming from a different country, and if I would tell somebody, hey, I want you to be my friends and family from back home, that means that I appreciate you to a degree that you probably don't understand. Or that I love you to a degree that you don't understand. Because not everybody knows my family and my close friend circle. I don't expose my loved ones just because. I don't. So when she said that to me, that's how I took it. And I'm glad that I did, because it was thanks to that trip. I don't think I ever told her this. I will tell her this summer. That is what the, you see the traveling bug. bit me. And since that trip in 2009, where I met her family gave me housing, she gave me housing. They took me to different places around Canada. It was always a fun time. Try this, are you comfortable, this and that, curious about my life as well. Those long, uh, I'm a cocktail person, so those long nights of just like sitting down around a fire or around like a living room, just having a cocktail or trying different cocktails, because I'm a whiskey person. So so which is trying different, different spirits and just talking about life and our memories in grad school together. At that point, they gave me like a random gift just because I was there. I mean, a little bit teary eyed. Like it, it just marked again so much in my life. And I'm like, traveling is great. I want to, and I'm a sucker for learning, like they say. And I'm like, I need to travel more. And since 2009, I've always learned the budget for traveling. Like people tell me, oh, like, are you gonna go out this one? Like, I'm probably not gonna go out today because I need this money for when I go to my trip in, let's say, 3 months. And like, it's 3 months away, yes. But if I know myself and I continue this pattern of not being aware, I'm gonna get to the trip and then I'm not gonna spend the money that I like to spend when I'm on vacation, because I have a whole different life when I'm on vacation versus when I'm like on my daily life here in Chicago. It's a different thing. Um, so the reason that I mentioned that is because uh, in Chile I traveled alone, and in this case it was different because the person that was telling me to travel and go there, I consider him a friend and even more of a close friend now, but I haven't known this person for a year. I just met them randomly at a convention in May last year, and they're from Chile. He and his friend were from Chile. We talked about it. We made friends, to get acquaintance. We follow each other on social media, and then we kept kind of talking. But him and me kind of kept actually just talking and chatting and everything. And I was complaining about the weather in Chicago, and everybody that I meet, I want to let them know that I hate the winters in Chicago, and I hate the cold, and I hate the snow, and I hate the winter. So anybody that I can get a chance to tell them that, so they know that about myself, I think everybody in the world would know this. So that came up on conversation, and he said, "Well, in February is our summer," and I'm like, "Say less." So I'm buying the tickets, went over there, and the thoughts coming like, these people are adults. You're going to their turf. You're not in the United States of America, Puerto Rico. Like you're in a different international country. You're by yourself, and and I'm more of I'm really paranoid with my safety, if that makes sense. So I'm thinking about all these scenarios, and I study forensic psychology. So we're talking about like criminal behavior. So I'm thinking about this
Right,
awful stuff
right.
that can happen to me in this trip. I even told my friends, hey, if I don't check with you guys and you don't see, like, because we have like a chat of best friends, I was like, if you don't see that I post a story at least once a day, and also I have my location on my phone, I'm like, if you don't see it on a day, I need you to call me immediately or send me a message. And if I don't answer you, I don't know what you're gonna do, but call the embassy, send the troops. Like something happened to me, like,
Troops.
because like I'm thinking about all these things, right? And proper, and I'm like, and I know some people are thinking, you're thinking of all of that when you're on vacation. The answer is yes, yes I am. So I went there, and the reason that I mentioned the story about my friend from Canada, it was because the same experience happened to me in Chile, more or less, in the sense of this person. I'm thinking I'm staying 10 days in the same spot, like around the same city spots, or maybe something out there, because that's where he was from, right? This person took me to the north side of Chile, which we had to take another plane. I was tired of flying because there was a delays and everything. It took me like 20 something hours to get there because of delays, and I missed flights. Like it was bad. So he took me to a northern part of the country to meet one of his best friends, which I didn't know. We were gonna stay over there for I knew I was gonna stay in that area for a few days, but I didn't know they were going camping with this a person's best friend's family. So now I'm meeting his best friend for the first time, and I'm meeting this best friend's like family for the first time, and then other best friends of his. And it's like, oh, I'm the new variable, right? And also I look like this. I don't look from Chile, right? So okay, so they know I'm the different one. But the way these people just, again, just took me as one of them. They even gave me a nickname. I don't have a nickname, like because my name is short. It's like Luis, right? Like I don't have a nickname. They even gave me a nickname, and talking about like the differences in culture, the similarities in culture. Again, we're talking about words, how they sound funny in one language and the other. We're talking about life experiences, how they met. They ask us how we met, throwing jokes. And what I'm telling you, it's not just only adults. I'm talking about there's teenagers, there's little kids running around. Like I am in a family gathering of people I just met. And it was so heartwarming. And then we stayed there for a few days, and they catered to me in every way possible. And I try to cater back as much as possible too, mostly by buying things. I'm like, I'll pay for dinner, I'll pay for everything, because I was like, I don't know what else to do. Like you're all doing everything. And then we went back after that part in Chile, which I saw beautiful, just like the nature aspect of Chile. Anybody listening to this, if you've never been to South America, go to Chile. Or if you've never traveled before, Chile can be one of your top ones because it is so beautiful. I am trying to make this a yearly trip, and I want to go back next year just to explore the south side of the country because it was just mind blowing. And just seeing deserts for the first time, like desert mountains next to a beach. Like I didn't know that like deserts can have like beaches next to them. Like mind blown. And just sculptures in the middle of the desert, going to beach towns, because then they also took me to different parts of the country. Still, like driving 2 hours, 3 hours one way, just for me to experience it, just for me to see what they do. And that was it was like I'm stuttering because I just can't really describe in words how grateful I am that that was my experience, especially with somebody that I haven't even known for a year. It will be a year in May this year. And these people also were so open to meet with me, have fun with me. You know, we went to restaurants. They know I had like cocktail bars. They took me to cocktail bars. I love museums. They took me to museums. We went to this museum uh, that talks about how Chile was able to overthrow their dictatorship, which I didn't have no idea of that part of world history. It has 3 floors. By the third floor, I was crying. Like I was just like, I can't. Just like because they were talking
Wow.
about yes, they were talking about um all the ways and all the suffering that these people went through, like refugees, people being kidnapped and murdered, like all these things of the dictatorship. It was hard. And I did learn 2 things in that museum though that I tell people: women in art save the world. That's the way. Women in art save the world. And it was just really powerful because of not only because how beautiful the country was and how rich in history they put it out there and accessible, because I think the museum was free too, like anybody can just go there and learn about this history. But it was about the experience that I had with the people from there and the conversations that I had with my friend that I was talking to you about, because I was making a comment, and this is what you talk about, why this what insights did I get. One of them is like, it sounds cliche, but to be grateful for the resources that I have, because it was put into perspective, because I would make a comment about, oh, this is so inexpensive for me because I'm making US dollars. And then my friend went a comment, I was like, yeah, it's my friend made a comment not to fight it, to be snarky. It was like, yeah, to you, because but to an average person who makes a salary here, it's not. And that got me to think, to kind of like a step back. And again, I didn't take it as an attack or anything, but it was a learning experience. I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. So I'm thinking about all those times that I was like, oh my God, this is so cheap. And I'm like, that is highly disrespectful. like, like you're literally disregarding all these people's like, their life here, because and even with that simple comment that people don't think about. So that is the kind of insight that I was talking about that I will get introspectively. That was one of them. Uh, the also like the dictatorship happening actually. Yeah, I will definitely encourage everybody to Google this about the dictatorship and how it got overthrown in Chile, because it wasn't that long ago, and it
Okay.
wasn't that long ago. So it's extremely interesting. So reflecting on how I didn't have to go through that, and how this is really close to these people, and how it's gonna affect the way they view the world and how they behave through the world. And that is another thing that I also got introspection of like, what do I know that I'm always conscious of like what I'm bringing, but it was like during that trip I sat down and self-assessed again. What are your goals of what you're bringing into the world, and what are you actually doing to bring this? And if you're doing, is it bringing this, or is it bringing totally something different? Not judging it whether it's positive or negative or whatever label you want to give it, but what are you bringing? You know, label it later. But are you doing what you said you set your goals to, or is it not? So it was a lot of self-assessment that got me to think about also that uh, I need to. I said that I was like I was telling you earlier. I think before we met about how like I'm making 2023 the theme of like resting. Like I just want to make sure that I prioritize resting. I self-assess and noticed that I wasn't doing that. Like I was like, you're saying you're doing this, and you did make I did make some steps, but do you feel rested? And the answer during that trip was no. Because when you get to travel alone, you don't have to worry about anybody else. So you
Right.
get to sit down with these thoughts however much you want, right? And you don't have to go to the dinner, or you don't have to somebody wants to go somewhere and you're like, okay, let me get ready. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of it. It's like self-assessing what I'm bringing to myself. And I say myself, and I tell people this, it's okay to be selfish, because selfish doesn't mean it's a negative thing. It's like you're allowed to be, and I tell them, yeah, be selfish with yourself in the sense of like, think about it this way: the same way that you want to show up for people and do everything for everybody. I even tell people, take your job for example. Like you give your job sometimes endless hours because of whatever your reasons are. What is stopping you from doing that to yourself? And that's a really hard question that I also got in that trip, because I'm seeing all these people living a different way of life, and there's things that I admire of that. And I'm like, I am a full-fledged adult with resources. How do they make it seem so easy to incorporate this in your life? So then it's about, then you get into the conversation, then you get into the conversations of habits and familiarity and what you're used to, or the comfort zone. So all these things happened during that trip. Obviously, while having fun. Don't get me wrong. Like it was great. I went to I don't know if people know about the Baha'i temples. Not that I follow the Baha'i faith, but it's a really interesting faith. I like reading about it, and the cool thing is that they have different temples around the world, right? One of them ended up being Illinois, which I visited. And then I didn't know that the second one for South America was in Chile. So they took me to the Baha'i temple in Chile, and they look different. So now I can say, I think there's 7 temples right now. Out of the 7 temples, I can say I visited 2, which I think that's kind of cool. I want to find what the other 5 are. So I can just say I went through all the Baha'i temples. That's kind of like a little bucket list that I have of goals in life. But it was just really interesting how just, again, these people have all these things that have a different way of life, and traveling alone and having these conversations with my friend and his friends there, it's just it was just eye opening, and it made me feel really grateful to a level that I don't know if I can say that I've never felt this grateful before, but it's a level of gratefulness that gave me a lot of understanding of who I am as a person, what I want to give out to the world, and what environment do I want around me, and how much of that how much of those variables I can actually control, and then focus on those versus trying to change something that's just not going to change because I don't decide whether it changes or not. Like for example, somebody else's behavior, like I can't make somebody do something. So let's refocus that energy into like, what can you do, kind of thing. So those are like the little insights that I got during this trip that had made this trip, apart from how beautiful it was just really, it was an insightful opportunity for me. And this trip just changed my life. Like it changed the outlook of my life, like all of it. Like, for example, I wouldn't have done this, to be honest, because I would have felt scared, or like, I don't know what I'm going to present. And that's something that I'm working on right now. Oh my God, I'm spilling all my trauma. So, okay. So, like, I would have done it, but I had to walk myself through those thoughts. And I'm like, what is your fear? What are you fearing? Things that people do on a daily basis? I mean, you're here, so you survived. So you're going to survive this episode of recording, even to that specificity. I'm able to walk myself now. Well, not as easy as I would like, but I'm learning how to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it sounds like that trip did so much for you. I mean, traveling does that. I got the travel bug too, and I love visiting other countries, other cultures, just seeing the way people live and having that knowledge of there's more, there's something else that I can add to myself because I feel like it gives me so much more and broadens my horizons and so many things. So, and that was another thing we were talking about because I told you that I I feel like I got addicted to budget traveling, right? Because when you told me about your trip, I was
Oh,
hating a little
yes.
bit. um, and then you also mentioned that there was things that you were doing, like you had a busted phone for a couple of years, right? And
Oh,
I said,
this is the
why do
new
we do that?
phone. This is the new phone. It's an iPhone 14 Pro Max. Oh, and actually talking about traveling. I don't know if you can see it there. Well, I'm not gonna show my password. So, oh, see, that's my family already talking. See, like I said, so that's me in San
Nice.
Francisco. Again, one of my travels. That was actually I took my sister there for the first time to San Francisco. So yeah, since 2009, I make sure that I travel. But yes, about the busted phone, and so that he's talking about. I used to have a busted phone, like he was saying. Like I used to before I changed this, and I changed this in October last year. I had a Samsung Galaxy 8.
Wow. So what I was saying was, sometimes we have these issues where we can do better, but we don't because of old patterns. And I wanted to ask you, how can having to struggle financially create parts of us that prevent us from doing better when we can?
It's layered, right? So I'm trying to be as concise again as possible because if not, we're gonna be here like 3 hours, right? But think about it as think about it as layers. One of those layers is uh, the lack of accessibility tied to your income because we live in a capitalist world. We can't say we don't. If you don't have the money to buy food, you can't buy food. It is what it is. And then with travel, if you don't have the money to buy this ticket, you're not getting on no plane or not getting on. If you don't have money to like put in the gas to put in your car, to put gas in the car and then just like travel, across the country or whatever state or country you can want to drive. If you have access to going to different countries by driving, you can't. So that's when budgeting comes in. And we're like, okay, well, if I know how much money I need to get here, where can I pull from to make it happen? That's basically what budgeting is. But what can happen, and it can develop into then you only see like basically like you only see numbers like so that makes sense. So instead of
Hmm.
like you trying to find enjoyment in the experience while you're in the experience, and yeah, you made the traveling, but you're still like in that, it can happen, you're still in that budgeting mind, and you're still the food comes in, you're like thinking, okay, it's $13 plus 4 plus 20. Some people can do that and they feel fine with it, fine, like go ahead and keep doing it, live your life. I'm not here to tell you not to do that, but I noticed that to me that just causes me stress when I travel. Like me thinking about the money and how much is in my account and how much I need to spend. I'm not saying that I'm a millionaire. Obviously, yes, there's some discretion that I take, but it's different when you're like wanting to travel and do something and then having that discretion kind of like on hyper focus, and then you're not really doing anything, and that can come uh from the lack of accessibility. It could come, for example, from childhood. If you live in a childhood where you notice that money was an issue, you don't necessarily have to understand as a child what money is, but you can hear and see how people fight about money, right? Or how they discuss the topic of money. So you start thinking about, oh, money is important. Money is something that I need to save. Money is something that I cannot throw around. So we're absorbing these messages as we grow up. And then depending on the access or no access that we have to money, it's gonna change the way that we see the world, and it's going to change the way that we travel, in this case, no pun intended, travel the world. Does that make sense?
100%. 100%. And I think that for me, it was I had gotten so used to struggling that even when I was able to do better, I was already programmed to be a certain way, right? So I'm
Because it was
driving to
not
work,
okay. Because you're like, yeah, you can't go away from the budget because that
right?
equates problems.
Right.
And we kind of stay in that mindset as we go on, and we're progressing, right? Like for example, the money that I make now was not the money that I make when I was telling you when I started with an entry job after a grad school experience, a degree, and then making, I wasn't even a full-time employee. I was an on-call employee with a
Mm,
master's degree at a hospital. Like, it was hard. So you tend to equate what you just said to something bad. Or if I don't budget, something bad's gonna happen. But we're not in the same space. So kind of like I tell people, if you can't think about it that way, think about that your budget can expand now.
mm, that's so true. And then we talked about the opposite, right? Because sometimes we see people who who can't necessarily afford to live a certain lifestyle, but they'll do everything to show others that they can. For instance, like buying expensive purses to show, and like, when you go out, you have it on you, or you buy sneakers that you can't afford, or electronics or anything. Why is it that sometimes people feel that they have to show that they are somebody that they can't really be behind closed doors?
Okay, since that's another layered question, I'm just gonna pick some.
Okay.
Uh, because it could also be a combination of everything, right? And one of them, we can tie it to finally having the accessibility to have things. Because, for example, if let's say somebody was able to now get to that point, or at least they can buy something, even though they might be, they can't pay rent, but they're able to access it, that takes priority. Because also it could be that somebody, is not used to having anything, and then all of a sudden you're able to like access so many things, and they just prioritize, like you said, the sneakers or the electronic because it feels good, right? People do it because it feels good. We're not.
Mhm.
I'm not here. I don't want to feel people that I'm demonizing buying things and buying expensive stuff. No, but it's more of a, if you can do it, right?
Right.
Because for example, I got this phone now because I had to sit down with myself and kind of deal with that. The other one that we talked about, it's just like, okay, I have the means to do it. Like, I don't have to walk around with this busted phone, and we can apply that to the other one. It's just like, do I need this particular item, or do I want to prioritize, being able to pay rent and stay here? And it can also come from a self-esteem issue and a self-image. I want to call it issue. It could be like, some people just have difficulties with self-esteem or self-confidence, or and all of those self-love embodiments, and they just want to show. And when you see something good on somebody, you normally compliment, or you probably get compliments that, oh my god, those
Mm,
sneakers, or oh, you got the new iPhone, how is it? Everybody likes that. I mean, that, why do they do it? Because it's like, so it's bringing them something to their lives that is making them happy. But then it's like, no pun intended, to what cost? So it
right.
could be it could be so many layers. So to just pick one and say, oh, is this? I can't. And it could be a combination of things. It could be this person finally, got a break that they needed, and now they're making all this money, and it's just that I'm just gonna blow it because I never had the chance to, and I wanna, and they wanna experience that as well. Like, what is it to just be able to afford something, whether or not that is gonna complicate my life later? I'm gonna live in the present moment. Like, what is how happy is this, or what is this experience? So again, it could be so many things, but like you mentioned, like, if behind closed doors it's really detrimental to your life, then it's like, okay, how about we look into it and see that maybe, yeah, how can you manage your finances in a way that your happiness gets prolonged, not it only lasts when you got the new phone, you got it, but then after a few days or whatever, that's it. Your phone is still the same. It's not gonna give you, like, it's not gonna make a hologram. It's not gonna dance. It's not gonna cook for you. So
Right.
it's in passing. So again, how do we? what thoughts, feelings, and behaviors do you think are affecting this part of your life that you're feeling that you want to buy all these things, but then have to deal with like the repercussions of it? Let's talk about that. Let's see what's going on. And then this kind of thing in therapy, as some clients that their finances have been the struggle, and sometimes just even looking at like, and especially in this age where everything is like a subscription and you kind of forget about it, kind of like the gym thing, the gym scenario. You pay for a gym and never
Right.
go.
Right.
So that happens with everything. It's just like sometimes it's just a simple thing of sitting down and looking at what monthly subscriptions you have, of things that you forgot that you even had. That can help tremendously because I go through it because I talk about finances in my sessions when needed. Like that is, I told my tell my clients, there's especially when they're talking about couples or people who are in romantic relationships. I tell we need to talk about two things: sex and money, because those two things just they are really important in relationships. Some of them no, but most of the time, like for example, last time I read it was years ago that I read what is it? Not a survey, a study. In the United States of America, like 50% of the divorces that happen here are because of those issues.
Right.
50%. That was, I don't know if it's changed. Hopefully it has, but that's quite a bit. So it's a matter of like just understanding what is the psyche behind that. Like, what are your thoughts, feelings that are getting you to this behavior of like, I want to buy the purses, the sneakers, get the nails done. I'm gonna go on an Uber Black instead of an Uber X because I want to just like do this. Like, what is it giving you? And then when you find what it's giving you, you can say, okay, what means can I learn to get there without having to, you know, being a risk of being unhoused, and then not having a place to live.
Right. I got you. And I do
Does
think a
that make
lot of it
sense?
comes.
I feel like I
It
rant
does.
sometimes. I'm sorry.
No,
It's
no,
like-
no. You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. I think a lot of it, like you said, comes down to a specific feeling. You want to feel good, and that's normal human behavior. But I think, like you said, we talk about and we break down what it is behind the feeling, and then we can get to a place where we can be balanced. Because you got to have balance, right? You can't, you know, like you said, buy the sneakers or the phone, and you can't afford to pay rent because then you're putting yourself in danger and jeopardy. So it made sense. It did.
Okay, good. Because I'm just like, because I feel like, okay, I know that I talk too much. And it's just like, okay, let me, let me
Um,
pause, let me pause, let me pause.
you're good. You're good. You're good. I promise. And this is a very personal episode, and I knew it would be because of the type of questions we were asking and the conversation we had beforehand. And
Hmm.
another thing that I wanted to get into is something that we spoke about was homophobia, because I had mentioned to you
I'm ready.
that
I'm ready.
I grew up in a culture, in and around a culture that was very homophobic, right? And as I grow and I get awareness, I'm learning that discrimination is discrimination, especially going through racial trauma, right? So there were a lot of times where I may have robbed someone of the opportunity to feel safe during their human experience, right? So now I know that and I see that, and I want to be better. And I mean, I am for the most part, but I think about the times where there could have been a group of guys around making fun of somebody who was gay or this or that, and I see it for what it was. It's ignorance and discrimination, right? So I wanted to give you an opportunity also to talk about homophobia.
Well, the homophobia is something that needs to be eradicated from the face of the earth as a queer man myself. Because apart from being annoying and, oh, you're thinking about, oh, we have this fights or like, oh, you got into a brawl with somebody, it goes beyond that. And because when you're discriminating against someone, or this person is enduring discrimination, they can also mean not only their emotional safety, but we're talking about their physical safety. People die
Right,
because of identifying as part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And how it has affected me and continues to affect me. Now I'm getting a little bit more comfortable in expressing that I'm a queer man because I also didn't have that opportunity back home to explore who I was. Because my sexual orientation, how I consider myself, will be pansexual. And my gender identity, I do feel like I'm a man. And then for all of those pansexual means, basically, I mean, I can go with anything under the rainbow. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. and I have had successful relationship with uh, the opposite gender identity of mine, which would be female. Uh, but right now, I'm in a relationship with identifying a man, and but back home again, because I liked women and I was able to develop relationships with women, I thought straight, and that was it. But being somebody who always grew up being kind of like effeminate, and in my mannerisms and the way that I carry myself at times, I don't have the deepest voice either. So I got bullied like that a lot in school. Thankfully, just not thankfully. I mean, if I had to choose, I'd rather words than being punched in the face. So thankfully, it was just like insults and all of this, but it gets to you because you're like it's really easy to spiral, especially with me as a young child, and being part of being discriminated for people thinking that I was gay, not even queer at that point, because queer I don't think wasn't that famous. The thing is, like, these people are even telling me what I am, and I'm like, I don't feel that way, and these people are deciding for me. So when you're discriminating, you're choosing the other person in the way that you think they are in your head. Like, forget about their life experiences, forget about being a darn human being. It's whatever your picture that you have here. And most of the time, it's what you think because it's different is dangerous. And it makes sense to a point because as we evolved to where we are right now as human beings, our brain, and we're talking about, prehistoric times. So our brain was wired to like anything different was dangerous. I mean, if you're talking about a caveman, or somebody that's walking around, and saw a snake and then saw the snake bit somebody and the person died, immediately the brain is like, oh, different, danger. I'm not gonna do that. But we don't have to operate that way anymore. That's not what we live at. So, and I tell people, like, even though it makes sense, doesn't make it right. Right? You can understand something,
Mm.
but it doesn't make it right. So I can understand discrimination where it comes from, but then people don't understand. Uh, I don't think people sit down and say, I can understand where this comes from, but it doesn't make it right. Like, it's not an excuse. And then going back to my experiences back home, so they were taking that away from me. So that obviously stayed with me for a long time. And then when I came to Chicago, I don't know if you know what Boys Downs is. Well, now it's called they changed the name recently, but basically that's like the gay neighborhood. I moved there by accident. I didn't know it was the gay neighborhood. So again, I'm thinking like it's the universe sending me signals like, hello, you might want to explore this now since you're not living at home. Like, you're not a teenager anymore. You're an adult. You can do whatever you want. And I remember I called my friend, the one that helped me move. I was just like, hello? And she's like, yeah. And it's like, so I'm noticing like a lot of rainbow pillars, like really just like down the street. Where did I move again? And then she told me, I was like, oh, interesting. And it was, Antonando made the story super long, so we can stay on topic on discrimination. This is where the city of Chicago let me, and thankfully where I moved, let me explore that part of myself that I didn't know needed to be explored. And as I went through the whole, then maybe I'm bisexual because if I like men and women, that means this. But then as I kept being involved in the community, apart from being exposed to all these different spectrum of sexualities and genders, you also got to see the dark side of how expressing this can really be dangerous. And in my experience, and I still do, I which is I don't want to like it's difficult for me to even like admit that I do this, but okay, whatever, we're doing it. Like, I edit myself still to some degree, depending on the places that I'm going, because I know that it could be, even if I go with my significant other right now, we're both men. Even when we go together, people obviously know that we're together. There's things that I just edit still. Like, maybe if I wanted to hold my partner's hand at some point during the night or event or whatever, or give them a kiss on the cheek, or just be next to them in a certain type of way. Looking all cutesy, and when you're like with your wife or whatever. I don't. I sometimes don't do that because the place discrimination is really interesting because discriminate when you're in a place. but discrimination is palpable, but nobody's talking about it. They will do things so you will see, and they will let you know that you're the different one. They will let you know that you are the problem, quote unquote. And that's one of the things that I still do. I don't do it as often because I try to then avoid those places. So I'm like, why am I going to a place I don't need to do that? And but it's that discrimination, like it stays with the person, and like you mentioned, racial discrimination. I have been a part of that. I have been racially profiled to the point that I thought I was going to die at one point uh, when I was in Arizona. It was like never going to Arizona ever again. Um, it it was that one in Arizona was the one that really marked me because when I used to dye my hair and my beard the same color. I went through that phase. So I had like, but I had like really fantasy colors like red or like cartoon yellow, like Johnny Bravo, if you know what that cartoon is, like
Hmm.
yeah, like you know what I'm saying, like cartoon yellow, like Goku going Super Saiyan yellow, like that yellow, blue, burgundy, like all these colors. I remember I had my yellow hair when I and beard when I went to Arizona, and we went to a store to get products for my hair because I need products for my hair. So we bought, I don't know how much. I was all of us were people that all my all the people that were with me were black, and I was the only Caribbean one. And what they call me, the light skinned one. So I was the light skinned one. So I was like, I was there, and then it was in the same plaza. So we bought things. We went to the grocery store because we were staying in an Airbnb. Three policemen came to the grocery store to get me to tell me to open my bag because I was accused of stealing a $2 or $3 hair mask
Wow.
after I just spent like I don't know how many. And between us, there was hundreds of dollars spent because we were all people of color. We need certain things for our hair and our skin and everything. And I was scared. And that was my birthday, my actual birthday. And when I was walking, I opened the bag, and then they asked me, "Why don't you have a receipt?" And I'm like, nobody really asks for receipts anymore, but I can gladly go back to the store. And I hate that I offered myself to go with them and kind of like to prove my innocence, because at that point I didn't get a chance to be innocent until proven guilty. No, I already stole the 300. I already know where they're thinking, I, or at least that's what they showed me. And I was escorted. Imagine how embarrassing that was. Getting escorted out of a grocery store by three policemen who are there armed, and I see their firearms, and I'm like, am I dying on my birthday? Like, this sucks. Like, I remember I'm like, and what the is this? Like, we're supposed to be celebrating like, it was intense. And when we get to the store, my significant other was with me, and I know him, so I know that he was heated because they were like, the other two were like, don't leave him alone. And he came, and we're in the shop, and she was like, "Yeah, I know that I saw you going here." And I'm like, "Yeah, because you have the products on the back. Like, what am I supposed to do? Ask you for them?" I didn't say like that because I know that I had all the chances of losing, but I was really calm and really nice. Just like, no, because they were there and all of that. What I wanted to say was like, I make enough money to buy all this rack of sales that you're telling me that I stole $3 hair mask after I spend like almost $100 on this product. That's what I wanted to say to be petty. But I was like, that's not the time. And I was really proud of myself, but it was sad that I had to be proud that I was able to like having to behave in a certain type of way. I basically had to whitewash myself to be able to get that. So that I felt that it was the only way for me to get out of alive. Because she was like, "No, you stole it." And I'm like, "Well, I see cameras there. I'll be more than happy. It's my birthday. I'm on vacation. I'll be more than happy to stay here until the footage comes here. I have no problem with that." And then they go with the whole, "I don't have access to the cameras. I have to call this. They haven't called me back." And I'm like, well, then other than then we're in an impasse right now. And at that point, I'm still scared because I'm like, they could just very well say, "Well, you stole it, you hid it, so now you threw it away, so now we're taking you." And what was it gonna do? But thankfully, after I said all of that, and I was just like, "I have no problem, we can stay here." And then after the camera thing was the thing that I felt that saved me, because it's, oh, I have to call this person. I'm like, call them. Like, I can spend the whole time here. I will sleep on the floor if it means that I'm alive. Like, if I have to choose, I will stay here. I didn't say it, but I was thinking, I will stay here as long as you need me to. And I did said something around those lines. Then because because I didn't do it, uh, then they left. But I would never forget the police officer tell me, maybe you shouldn't come here anymore. And I was like, in my head, got it. I don't know if he said it in a nice way, like just kind of like being, with the intention of like just it's not worth it, go,
Right. Yeah.
or just being racist and saying like, just never come here again. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um,
Either one isn't fair.
so that was my birthday. Talking about it when I was discriminated against. So it's well, as you know, it's because I'm pretty sure you, as a black man, has gone through your own
Sure.
experiences like that, and it sucks. And people don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to be like the elephant in the room. But like, if we don't talk about this elephant in the room, these are people that are getting killed.
Right. And
And I
and
tell
that's the
that to
point that I
people,
wanted to make, was discrimination is discrimination, and I see that now, right? Because I've had similar experiences, right? And it's not because anything was done wrong. It's just because I'm black, right? So if me being my authentic self in a capacity that I can't change because it's literally the color of my skin would have me be
yeah, we don't get
discriminated
to hang
against.
it again. It's just like I cannot take away my queerness and put it in a hang. I mean, okay, I'm gonna not be queer
Exactly.
today. It's just like, I don't want to be black
Right.
today. Let me put the skin off and hang it over here for the weekend. So I
Exactly.
tell people like
Exactly.
think about what you're saying.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Right. So I see that now, and that made me reflect so much on the culture that was popular growing up, and I understand that, like you said, what you don't understand, you fear. So, but also that's not a reason. If anything, it's an excuse. So I don't want to allow ignorance to be part of my character anymore. And
And yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned it because that's the insight and the essence of what I said earlier about we can understand something, but it doesn't make it right. It's like I
right.
can understand what fear like, because I've been fearful in my life, in some points in my life. I can understand all these other like, ignorance because I was ignorant. I was even ignorant to the point
Mhm.
of race in this country. I was playing devil's advocate for the other team because I don't want you to get banned or like suppressed or whatever. So I was like playing devil's advocate with my significant other who's a black man. So
Mhm.
so I recently, and it's funny you're talking about that. Like I was engaging in discriminatory like speech and racist speech like nobody's business because racism is just in case I use that interchangeably because racism is what's it called is not a branch. Racism is a type of discrimination. That's what I wanted to say. So
Okay.
again, I was playing for the other team with my partner who's a black man, and recently uh, I sat down. Again, this is also uh, part of the trip as well. I was like, I want to say randomly, I told him like, "Can I talk to you?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What happened?" And I was like, because you never want to hear, "We need to talk," or like, "I need to talk to you about something." It's always like,
Right, 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 right.
"What
Something
happened?"
bad. Right.
It's like, do I need to sit down? So I was like, I told him like how I'm paraphrasing, but I told him like I appreciate you staying with me and helping me learn because I can only imagine being with me for so many years and me saying all this BS that made
Mhm.
no sense and it was so racist. And I am so sorry. Like I felt really bad. I was like, and I think at that point recently is that I noticed that there's not an end goal in this. It's gonna be a marathon for me. I can't stop learning about how this is affecting other people because it still is. I can't stop not calling people in or calling people out. Obviously, when I feel safe and the resources to do so, I have the energy to do so, right? But that I continue to take action in whatever capacity. I cannot just do what I was doing before, which is like sitting down and be quiet and not do anything and choosing to do that and not doing that anymore.
Good, good. I think that, like you said, there is no end goal. it's a process, and it's something that you continually have to do in order to keep growing, because you never get to a point where you're healed or you know it all. So I think having that mentality of I'm going to continue to grow and try my best to get better in this will allow for us to be open about it, and to not feel like we know it all, or been there, done that type thing. So proud of you. I'm
And in
proud
our
of me.
cases,
Proud of us.
oh, thank you. No, I'm proud of you too. And I was gonna say like the what we tackled about, for example, you and me both have our experiences. We tackled the same subject, ignorance.
Right.
Where like if I'm noticing that there's like an issue right here, right now, because I really am assuming what I'm talking about versus learning about, in my case, how race is really played out in this country, because I was just operating on how it plays back home.
Mm,
And it took me years to understand, Luis, you're not back home. This is not the same place. It's not the same. And I took years to say that, because acknowledging that, I remember how difficult it was, because I was like, oh, so because I will feel safe living next to a police station. Now, absolutely not. Get me
yeah.
out. Like, I need to live as far away as possible from that. I'll take my chances if I'm living in this country. You know what I'm saying? So
For sure.
it's just really interesting how once you battle, and you like we talked about ignorance and fear, when you get to like your insight of what is it that you're behaving in this way, it's gonna open the door to change that you were talking about.
Right. Right. I'm glad we had that point in the discussion, that we could talk about that and share our experiences and be open about it, because I think that, like you said, we have to see the elephant and talk about it and move it. It needs to be gone. So thank you for sharing your
It's like,
experience
here's your
and walking
peanut.
me
Please
through
walk away. Just don't be in this room anymore.
it. All right, so I want to get to some therapy talk. All right. Um, Something that you do, not that that wasn't therapeutic by any means, because that was for sure therapeutic, but
It was.
I
It
want to talk
was.
about what you do. Um, you help your clients understand the connection between their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. What can that look like?
Okay, so I'm actually going to use an example that I use every time in therapy when I explain to them what this is.
Okay.
So, and I don't know where I got it. I know it's not mine. I think I might have added some things here and there, but I know I read it probably in a book or somewhere. So, when we talked about thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, is how those things are connected in the sense of like you have uh, things are going to happen around your life. You know, you're going to have an event. And after you experiencing that event in whatever capacity, you're going to have thoughts about that event. And that involves your processing, when you're understanding, all these thoughts that come to mind when that event happens. Let's say, oh, I'll do the example later. Let me finish the explanation. So then after those thoughts are rummaging through your head, it triggers feelings. And your feelings are anger, happiness, excitement, confusion, all of those. Sadness, joy, elation, feelings, right? Those are triggered because of those thoughts that you had of the event that happened, right? And then with those thoughts and feelings, you're gonna end up behaving, which is whatever it is that you end up doing. Like whether it's physically, like doing something with your body, or it could be the behavior could be mentally as well, kind of like, for example, stopping yourself from thinking something or reframing your thought. That can also be a behavior. But it's like what you do basically with your thoughts and feelings, and the behavioral piece, that is like the expression of what's going on in here, right? So does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. So then put it as an example. Let's say you're sleeping, right? You're in this Airbnb, amazing, 3 floors, everybody gets their own room. Fine. Let's say it's you and some family member. Let's say just you. Let's say you're waiting for your family members to come from a different flight, but you got the first there, you're all settled, everything's nice. It's 2 a.m. in the morning, and all of a sudden you hear the downstairs window next to the door shatter. Like you hear the shatter. Exactly. What thoughts came to your mind?
Somebody broke in.
Let's leave it like
My
that. Somebody
safe.
broke.
Okay.
Okay, so let's leave it like that. Somebody broke in. Perfect. Because it could have been anything. Because it could have been a branch, right? It could have been a tree. It could have been so many things. But you, at that moment, what you thought was somebody broke in. So let's stay with that one.
Okay.
If you're thinking that somebody broken into your house or to the place that you're staying that's supposed to be a safe place because you lock the doors and everything to make sure that you're safe, and you're not expecting anyone, and you're surely not expecting anyone to break your window, especially if it's not yours, if you're in an Airbnb, right? So if you're thinking somebody broke into your house, what feelings start stirring up inside?
Panic, fear, um, I think angst, anything that would the opposite of safety.
Yep. So I like those panic and fear. Let's say and ants. So there's an event that happened, the window shattering. It gave you these thoughts, and your thoughts came to like somebody broke in. Nothing else could have happened. Somebody broke in, right?
Mhm.
And then it got triggered this panic and angst. So then let's go back. Somebody, the window shattered. You're already knowing, not knowing. You're already thinking somebody broke in. You're in panic mode. What do you think you will end up doing?
Trying to leave, call the police, hide.
I would lock the door in my room and then call the police. So we're right. One was the same
Right.
thing. So that is the example. An event happened. You had your own thoughts about it that were triggered because of that event. Those thoughts triggered these feelings, and these three we can't control. Like this just happened. Kind of life throw you a curveball. Then you're like with your thoughts and like, oh, this, that, and the other, and then it's causing you all these uncomfortable feelings or whatever. And then the behavioral piece is the one that I tell my clients we can work on. Or we can work on this when we know how to manage these two. We can't manage what happens in life. That's just, I mean, we might plan for things, but anything can happen, right? One day
Right.
one, and I tell my clients, and anything can happen because one day you felt you went to sleep and there was no pandemic, and you woke up and there was a whole pandemic. So like anything can
So true.
happen.
Right.
So right. So it's like I tell them, so when we know how to manage our thoughts and feelings, we can then expect changes in behavior. Because let's go back to that same example. Let's again, the window shattered. I didn't. When I say the window shattered, did you even imagine the environment outside the house that I just told you, or no?
You know,
No, right?
I
So
automatically went to thinking somebody broke
yeah,
in.
but I mean, but it makes sense because if you're falling asleep and all of a sudden you wake up to shattered glass, it's not far fetched that you're thinking somebody's breaking in this house and I'm in danger, and then you're feeling all this panic.
Right.
But what? But if when you know to manage your thoughts and feelings, it's like you can wake up and thinking, oh, but I'm like, but then when you train yourself to think, is there anything else that could have happened? And then let's say that at that moment you notice that it's like there's actually a storm outside, not thunder, no, nothing, it's just raining and a lot of wind. And then you're like, huh, could this possibly be why the window shattered? And then when you go downstairs, if you go, I probably wouldn't. I probably really just lock the door. Because again, I'm paranoid with my safety. I would have locked the door and called the police. But it could very well have been that the police comes and the thing got shattered because of a branch. And there's nothing wrong because we're not labeling wrong or right or how you reacted. It's about getting insight into where do you go with your thoughts and what feelings are evoked, and then what do you do to manage those, if that makes sense. So that's how I told my clients that example of the shattered window, when to kind of see how you connect your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
That was a good example for sure. And I think that a lot of times we may not be able to manage our thoughts and feelings because of experiences that we've had in the past, right? Something that could be labeled traumatic. So the next question I wanted to ask you is how would you define trauma?
Well, trauma has so many different definitions in our field, so I'm not even going to go into that. But what I could say in essence, trauma can be boiled down to there was an event in your life that marked you in some way. It affected you in some way that now it's difficult for you to function or to get where you want to go presently. So that's how I would define it. Again, there's so many definitions out there. So like in our field, so I don't want to get into beef with anybody. But into the essence is
Right.
that just think about there was an event in your life that marked you, that stays with you. But It's not letting you. It's this the way you're operating because of that trauma is causing a barrier. Like the trauma is like that experience that you had that now is a barrier to, let's say, your happiness, for example, that you want to go. Because if something was marked in you that you feel this is the only way to understand what's going on with you. And just to add to that is I tell people, when you go through experiences, you can't change them, unless you find a time machine. If you do, please let me know. My social media will be left at some point. Please send me a DM. Um, but in the meantime, we can't change it, and it's not about a lot of my clients throughout the years, and including myself as a human being. It's like, oh, I wish things were different, or this is just so annoying. Why doesn't this change? And what I tell people therapy helps you is to kind of like surf that wave or swim in that, to learn how to swim in that issue that's going on. So with coping skills and whatnot, it's still there because it's things that you can't control. But there's ways for you to make this voyage not as excruciating as it could be.
I got you. That was a good explanation. What's a way that trauma can be passed down from generation to generation, or what are some ways?
Oh, I love this. So I'm talking about homophobia. I'm talking about toxic masculinity. How about that one? So, so yeah, and so it's pretty prevalent in my culture, right? So I can say, I don't care. So in Caribbean culture and in Puerto Rico, like there is this expectation of, we've all heard. I mean, we're from similar culture, we have the same, we almost have the same ancestors, right? So it's the whole like,
Hmm.
let's take the whole men don't cry. That right there is generational trauma. I came from
It
a
is.
household that men are men, and then me being effeminate, that was a whole issue. I even went to doctors to see what was wrong with me because I walked a certain way, and I'm not even joking.
Wow.
So because my friends still joke around because like it's like oh, this is the Luis's walk, and then they start just like imitating how I walk, and I'm like, whatever makes me feel powerful, I don't care. But when I was smaller, but it's and it's funny because it's just how I walked, and I remember that our neurologist told my mom that's how he walks, like that's just like how he walks, like there's nothing wrong. Like and he went to explain like there are some people, including athletes, that this is just how they're wired. Like there's nothing wrong with this. And I remember that. So thank goodness
Mhm.
that neurologist. I don't know this neurologist's name. I don't know who this person is, but thank you. Because at that point, at least at home, my walking was never talked about again. But then going back to the Mendel cry, it's kind of like that. There's suspected behaviors as if and not even me, because we didn't have even a say of how I wanted to identify. I was told what to do. We are told what to do. Like you are perceived as a man to me and to this household and to these people around you. These people around you are telling you that you are a man and that you need to learn to do this. And if you deviate from that, you're the problem, not us. But then what am I gonna do when I'm depressed when I was bullied? That was hard. I remember when I got my heart broken the first time. I cried by myself. The years later, my mom told me that she heard me cry in my room, but she didn't want to like pry or like go inside and whatnot. I don't know how I will react now. I would have said, "No, come in and please give me the support." But at that moment, you're a teenager, you don't know what's going on,
Right.
and I probably would have been. And and also hormones all over the place. I could have been like, "Leave me alone," all that stuff. So I wouldn't blame any parent saying, "You know what? I kind of don't have the energy to deal with this right now. So I'm gonna let it go. I'll deal with it later." I mean, I'm not, right? But that's an example of generational trauma because it got passed down to like my mom and my dad about what people needed to behave, and then they gave it to me, and I operated the world for a long time like that, like Mendo cry, and then it was a whole battle with myself a lot of the times because a lot of the times I was like, but because I didn't understand what the problem was with crying.
Right.
I don't know how I got this I don't know why I got this I don't know where I got this emotional intelligence from, but I was just like, I just don't get it. And the whole like, and I was also like, I don't understand what's the problem that I don't like cars. I don't like cars. I like how pretty they look. Like I will go down a Porsche and like a 2-door like car. Like I love that. I like to see them. I don't care about the engine. I don't care how many horsepowers it has. And then sports. There were some sports that I like, don't get me wrong. But sports that I enjoyed and I was participating. Like I went, for example, sports was the thing that guys did. So they put me in baseball. I went volleyball. I did like volleyball was fun. But then it started to hurt too much because I would put me with the bigger kids, and then they would just like spike that thing, and then like their forearm like that would just hurt. I'm just like I can't do this. But it was fun. But it was like sports that if I was participating in it, I found them fun. But I'm not doing a fantasy league. I'm not here knowing like, for example, you and the Eagles. I'm like, I don't know who the Eagles are. Like, I know it's the NFL because you have the thing here, but I'm somebody, oh, the Eagles. I'm like, I don't know, basketball, football. Like, I don't know, because I really don't care. Not that there's nothing wrong with it, just it's not of my interest. But that was the
Right.
problem, and that
Right.
was, and that even gave more people even more ammunition to that. Oh, he's gay because he's a man. Again, telling me what I am. And that's how generational trauma can get passed down. As an example, like you're not in these behaviors and we're gonna tell you and we're gonna ostracize you, or sometimes people get beat up, or like get told like you're not enough, you need to do this, if you don't do this you're wrong, the life that you're living is wrong. That stays with people. So
Right.
and that is how, and then it's not far-fetched to think if a person has been operating like that for their whole life, or mostly their whole life while they were developing, that stays here already ingrained in neural pathways. So of course that's going to be passed. Some of that's going to be passed down. And also on top of that, add to the fact that parents or caregivers are not perfect. They're human and they're going to make mistakes. So you add that layer on top of it. It's just a nice combination of not the best.
Right. How difficult can it be to break these cycles of dysfunction and generational trauma that have been passed down?
I think I'm going to answer that with a question. How do you feel you're going to change a behavior that you have done for decades in 2 sessions of therapy?
Impossible.
Because we're talking about patterns of behavior, we're talking about patterns of thought that have made you survive up until now.
Mm.
Questioning that, it's hard. Because then you're like, I need to question my life, but I'm here, I'm surviving. Why do I need to do? And a lot of it's like, why do I need to do that? And because nobody likes to be pointed at that you're doing something wrong or that you're hurting somebody. Nobody wants that. So it's
Right.
also that like I'm not gonna admit that I did something wrong, especially like when you try to like tell, like I said, the other team about, yeah, this is kind of, you know, racist. No, never. And then and then when they go like, I have friends of this and that and the other, and they're from this, and I'm just like, totally beyond the point that we're talking about. But sure, go ahead,
Right.
go off and
Right.
defend yourself while and make it about you, while I was trying to tell you how this is affecting our relationship right now. But go ahead, go make it about you. Yes, go defend yourself. Yes, go ahead.
Right.
And not and to take that as an example, that's more or less what we do. Because when somebody comes, it's kind of like I tell this analogy to my clients. This one is for me. I don't know if somebody else did it, but this one I did make it up. This one I did develop it by myself. So when I told my clients in therapy, it's like I also demystify that therapy is always like cupcakes and butterflies and rainbows and unicorns and everything's gonna be happy go lucky. No. I told my clients, think about therapy at times as a circus tent where we're gonna go through, things that some enjoyments and like some activities and some things that you will see that you would enjoy about yourself. But we're gonna go to a part where things are gonna probably be scary, and you have housed these things in cages, and they're probably angry and they're
Mm.
scary, but they're part of you. And therapy is a way for you to have compassion over that thing that you cage, because you shouldn't be caging it because it's part of you. Let's look at it and let's treat it with compassion and see where it leads you. You don't have, it's not about labeling anything at the moment. It's about acknowledging that that is there. And then we can go around to see how it affects your life. And then you get to decide what to do. And I tell them in therapy, with me, as long as we're working together, you don't have to do that alone. And sometimes you can therapy, you can say, you know what, I don't want to. In this case, talk about this anymore. Okay, let's put it in the shelf. We don't have to. We'll go buy it later. If something comes up and I think I need to take it out and show it to you again, I will, because that's what you're paying me for. Like, I'm not
Right.
your friend, I'm your therapist, right? So you're paying me to give you an objective as much as I can, because I'm a human too, but an objective viewpoint of what's going on, because you have your own biases, people around you have their own biases, and having an objective point of view, it's going to help. So I will bring it up, but then if you tell me no, I don't want to see it, okay, I will report it back. Because I'm not here. I'm gonna say this right now as a PSA. It's a red flag when a therapist is telling you what to do. That's a red flag because it's about you. Like, you're paying them to see you, not for them to tell you what to do. And if that's
Right.
what you're looking for, then that's what you need to talk about in therapy. It's like, why do I need to feel the need that everybody needs to tell me what to do, and I cannot live the life that I want to? Because you need to laugh, because life can be joyful. It can be, and there's ways to get there. At least that is my hope, and that is my belief. And I try my best to give that out there. That's why not only therapy, I focus on because we used to see everybody for therapy now, but I know I focus on a certain population, not because I'm discriminating against anybody. It's because I know that's a barrier. I know there's a communication, I know there's a language issue there. I know there's a culture issue there that a lot of people don't understand. I did. So I'm looking for the people that I know that are most likely going to be affected by that in this country, specifically, to be specific. And that's why I target that. 'Cause I see it. And let's talk about it, because it's difficult. Again, going back to your question, these are decades of behaviors that we're trying to change. So it's going to take work.
Yeah,
Like, you can't
for sure.
expect, like I asked you the first question and you did that expression, like, how do you expect to change decades of behavior in 2 hours? Impossible.
Right. So then let me ask you this, Lewis. For somebody who is struggling with their big feelings or their emotional health, or just realizing now that they may need to talk to somebody because they've had a difficult life, but they're on the fence about it, and they're trying to decide what to do and how to do it. What encouragement would you give someone like that about therapy, or just about talking to someone about their feelings?
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the barriers that I noticed as my years as a therapist, and I actually developed a service to help with that, because part of it is that, like you mentioned, people don't know how to look for this. Like, they normally would just go and, like, well, I'm just gonna go and, like, find whatever therapist I find online. I'll make an appointment if they have availability and then just go. There's so many factors that can affect the process of therapy that people are not taught to think about. Language being one of them, culture being another, sexuality being one. Not like you with your clients, but like, to somebody who is gay, seeing a gay therapist may be the best option. Or somebody who is queer, uh, somebody is under the umbrella term of the LGBTQIA plus community. Gender identity. Maybe a woman wants to see another woman because she has a traumatic past with men, and vice versa. A man wants to see a woman because he has traumatic events with men, whatever those traumatic events may be. Or the contrary, woman wants to see a man because she had traumatic events with women, and a man wants to see a man because he had traumatic events with women. You know what I'm saying? And also depend, and the other piece is the issues that you're bringing, or concerns that you're bringing to the therapy space. For example, what do I say by that? If, let's say, you're looking for something, you're looking to help somebody to help you with your anger management, but your anger management is rooted on, let's say, you have some type of addiction, let's say gambling addiction. I wouldn't be able to help you because I'm not a specialist in addictions. Like, I know a little bit of it, but I would not take you as a client knowing, especially after, because normally what happens is they do a consultation call to kind of see what's going on, and they see if they can help you or not. Somebody would have told me that. I'm like, I can't help you. And even if we're months in therapy and then all of a sudden they uncover this, ethically, I will tell them, if this is what is going on in like a root of all these concerns that you're bringing up, you can stay with me if you want, but we need to find some type of specialist to address that specific concern that you're bringing or presenting problem, because I won't be able to, and I know that. So a lot of people don't think about that. So I think thinking about things that you're looking for in therapy is the key. And then my service, well, I go over like the service that I have. I go over, I do a little mini assessment with these people, and then I look for therapists depending on what they tell me. So if they have like anxiety issues, so I try to look for like what anxiety related uh, interventions or practices or certifications like therapists have, or the other areas of like expertise and all of that to help them. But I would say think about what you're uh, what you want in a therapy. Not so much about your concern because you're living through it, so you know. At least you have a certain idea of what's going on because you're clearly seeing it. So it's not that much that. It's like what are you looking for in your therapist? Even how do you want your age is another one. Maybe you want a therapist who is older. Maybe you want somebody to be a millennial. Maybe you want somebody to be Gen Z. All of those things affect can affect the way you look for therapy, or like can make you not fearful but kind of like lost in like what to do. And a lot of people just don't do it because they don't know what to do, or when they go to the first therapist, it didn't work out, they're like, oh, therapy doesn't work. And I'm like, well, let's look at all these factors that affected your therapy session,
Right.
and most often than not, a lot of those things are us coming into play, at least in my experience, what I've seen. And that's why I developed that service, to take that barrier out, because I want people to like learn how to find a therapist that they're just right for them, so they can feel comfortable talking about at least feel a level of comfortability knowing that they're going to somebody who's going to specifically be what they're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And there's so many things that you um, gave insight on, like the sliding scale, pro bono, and then just the thing that you mentioned now, like just because you see a therapist once and it doesn't work doesn't mean that therapy doesn't work. It means that maybe that just wasn't a good fit. So thank you, man. Thank you so much for everything.
No, you're welcome.
This was deeply healing. Um, I felt so comfortable talking to you about important things that, like you said, the elephant. We talked about the elephant. Right? We gave the elephant the peanut. It's gone, bro.
And for all you know, like me and Jolan literally just met. Like this is like the second time we talk,
Yeah,
and I
but
felt the same way. Just I was telling him like I feel like this is a friendship already. Like, like I knew you for a long time. This is at the
agreed,
depth of the
agreed,
conversations that we're having.
agreed, man. So if people want to find you online or on social media, where can they find you? What's your handle?
uh, Mostly I'm active is on Instagram, and it's at beard the rainbow. Literally beard, that's like you have a beard, the word dot THE, and then the word rainbow. Long story short, when I was like, I started Instagram like dying. Like I said, my hair, my beard, same colors. You will see a little bit of that there. Um, so I kind of like stuck with that name because I didn't want to change it. But when you find me there, you're finding now a lot of it's two things mainly: um, mental health content, and then self care content. Self care in the sense that we talked about traveling. Traveling is my self care. So I share my travels with people just to show the world, like and kind of give that perspective of seeing their therapist engaging in self-care, because if I preach it I have to do it. So so they can see that. But also I have a lot of, and also I use a lot of humor, as you all probably saw if you see it or like heard. I use a lot of humor even in my sessions, and I even tell my clients, if humor doesn't work for you, please let me know and I will turn it off or tone it down, because I it's part of my culture. It's part of being from the Caribbean, from Puerto Rico. We joke about a lot of things, especially traumas, because if not, we're just gonna end up
Right,
crying. So we need to make a joke
right,
out of it.
right.
You're probably familiar with that, right? We need to make a joke out of it because I'm like, we've been through a lot. So it's like, as a race, it's just like we've been through a lot. And nationalities we throw into that. It's very interesting being Puerto Rican and then having this, and then looking into the relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico. But it's a lot of mental health content with humor because of that, and also just to make it easily digestible. I also have other series. content there, but it's to make it digestible and accessible for people who might not be able to go to therapy. At least I know I'm putting something out there that is truthful and not pseudoscience or pseudo therapy. No, I it's quality. Yeah, it's funny and whatnot, but it's quality there. So again, Beard the Rainbow on Instagram. I have my other links for my other sites there as well because they're in development. But that is the most that I'm active from because and it's important for me because that account was just mine, but then it developed into when the pandemic happened into just giving mental health out there and just having people just like get a slice of something that might help them go through the day because I mean, we all went through a pandemic, right? And we did not, that affected us in many ways, whether we want to accept it or not. The pandemic affected us thoroughly. And
Mm.
if I can help in some way, um, if I have the energy, I will dive in and do it.
Well, I think that you are helping. I know this was helpful. It was helpful for me, so I hope that anyone that watches this episode benefits from what you put out. You know, your energy is great. Your
And
knowledge is
follow me and
great.
share it, my content, so that way I can like continue sharing this with the world. Please, that's the point also. Just share it, share it. So that way he can continue to be famous with the not your ordinary parts, and then I can continue to be like also known for mental health content because we need to put like you mentioned, just like because these conversations are normalized. And I mean, you're telling about I used to be this person who was really into homophobia, and I was embedded in what did I say? In defending the other team all the time. And it wasn't until we normalized these conversations that we're able to heal and grow. So I appreciate you for giving me the chance without even knowing me that much, and I'm just really grateful. I really am.
Same, 100%. I'm so grateful that we got the opportunity to do this. You got to express yourself, tell your story, and we talked about a lot of things that are a challenge for a lot of people. So again, man, thank you so much for this. Thank you for your
You're
time.
welcome.
Thank you for what you do, how you do it, and for who you are.
Thank you. I appreciate it.